Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's my distinct pleasure to have Dr. Michael Yoder again as a guest on my Polytalk EDU. Welcome aboard, Dr. Yoder.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the invite.
Absolutely, it's been long overdue. We've been trying to kind of have a second episode after with the one we had a few months back, and then a lot has happened. Obviously since with everything, political climate, economics, Trump administration, a lot of things. So we're gonna untackle and kind of like just dive in to kind of continuation of the one previously we had, and then to kind of put a positive or just a spin on things, and then how we are going to be progressing from this point on from an economic and a political standpoint. So today's episode is going to be the actually the title for the episode today is going to be Oil War, the USMCA review, why 2026 is the most dangerous year for North American trade. That is going to be the episode. So that's basically what we're going to be talking about. So Dr. Yoda, just before I ask you the opening question, is there anything you want to just say and just kind of, just kind of get us started before we actually get into the crux of the whole thing?
Well, I mean, by definition, this entire discussion is going to involve a lot of guesswork because things are just completely in flux right now. I mean, things are changing so fast. They're changing by the hour, almost. And this time yesterday, we weren't sure if there was going to be like major warfare at all. I think probably by about noon or early afternoon yesterday, it seemed as though um, uh, I don't know, the movers and shakers out there were guessing that probably President Trump would find an exit strategy or an off ramp very quickly so that he would not have to go to war because the stock market did not crash yesterday. And in fact, of course, this morning it's I haven't checked it in a couple hours, but it looked pretty strong today. But that's the way things are going to be for a while.
Right.
Then there's the whole question of maybe I'm jumping too quickly into the topic here, but we could circle back on some of this stuff. But then there's the whole question of what kind of retaliation in the long run
Right.
could come out of the Middle East.
Absolutely. Everything is in flux right now. It's a very volatile situation, obviously. Again, 24 hours a day, 24 hours ago, we did not know exactly what's going to happen. And then the final 11th hour, we were able to kind of negotiate some kind of a ceasefire. And then all the terms has been agreed upon thus far. I've been watching the news and listening to different networks regarding that. A lot of people are not really sure if it's going to hold or not. It's going to involve proxy wars, and it's going to be involving the war in Lebanon as well. There's a lot of very volatile situation, obviously. So this is the kind of just the backdrop behind our conversation today. So let's just kind of just jump in and start talking about this, so unveil everything. We have to untackle a lot of things in here. So, Dr. Yoder, we are seeing global supply chain snap right now with the Strait of Hormuz effectively closed. Okay. In your 2023 book, you described the Texas-Mexico corridor as a vital economic ecosystem. Given the global chaos today, is this land bridge now the most important and perhaps only secure supply route left for the United States economy?
No, it's not the only one, but it clearly the importance of if you want to call it a corridor, I like that kind of terminology. Um, that involves the three members of USMCA will see heightened importance. That's definitely. But of course, a lot of that has to do with the pending uh, renegotiation of the USMCA that's already kind of starting. The different countries, the different member countries are already stating what their objectives will be for the actual renegotiation that will occur. I believe it's over the summer. But if everybody, quote unquote, plays their cards right in the eyes of President Trump, I think I think Mexico is going to be strengthened from this, especially from a logistics standpoint in the movement of goods. I think one thing that's going to happen, and I've not heard anybody else say this, so maybe I'm crazy, but I think that the Panama Canal, important as it is, people are going to start to think that maybe there should be an alternative just in case. And I think this will probably boost Claudia Sheinbaum's Isthmus project. I think that, there's a port on the Pacific side and then a port on the Gulf side, Gulf of Mexico side, and they're linked. That's the skinniest or the narrowest portion of Mexico, and it's linked now by rail. And they want to build that up as a kind of a trans-isthmus corridor to act as a substitute to the Panama Canal. I think that has all of a sudden become enhanced.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna just mention something before we kind of delve into the Middle East and the Strait of Hormuz. Is that we're gonna talk about the Venezuela factor. With the political shift in Caracas this past January, the U.S. is eyeing Venezuela's heavy crude again. Okay, the oil, and I've been like really kind of doing a lot of research regarding this. The crude oil coming out of Venezuela, it ne needs a lot of like refining and everything else. It's not ready to
Exactly.
go per se. It's not as pure as is the Middle East coming, the oil coming out of the Middle East. Does this new oil supply diminish Mexico's leverage in USMCA negotiations?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So, in other words, the new reliance on Venezuela and the reduced reliance on the Strait of Hormuz, what does that do for Mexico?
Yes. Is there
Um,
anything aside? I mean, just leave the Strait of Hormuz aside. Just the fact that we basically after the whole thing happened in Venezuela, does that have any impact on diminishing or enhancing the leverage in USMCA negotiations? Does that have any impact on that?
I really don't know. I'm stumped by that one.
Yeah.
If I had to make an educated guess, I would say that probably the three parties are going to diminish somewhat their demands vis-a-vis oil and gas.
Okay.
Gas kind of goes hand in hand with oil
Sure.
simply because of the volatility of the global situation. Now, it does seem as though we have, shored up our supplies from Venezuela. But still, there's going to have to be a lot of investment made in Venezuela to get that going because they just don't have the capacity to extract what they have in reserve. So that's got to be built up. And you're right. It's a heavy kind of crude that involves a certain type of refining. When people talk about, oh well, there's oil from the Middle East and it's the same as the oil from Europe and from the North Sea and the same as Venezuela, et cetera, et cetera. That's not entirely true. I mean, it's a global internationalized commodity,
Sure.
but not all oils are the same. So, for example, the Venezuelan oil is kind of problematic in the way that it's refined. I'm led to believe that the North Sea oil is a little bit easier to refine, but whatever the case, the different refineries around the world specialize in certain grades of, or, certain types of crude. So, like, for example, the Texas Gulf Coast, I'm led to believe that that is geared very heavily. The refineries there are geared heavily towards Middle Eastern oil and also Venezuelan oil. And not interestingly, not so much from the Permian Basin. So that's one reason why it was recently announced that in Brownsville, the port of Brownsville there's going to be a new refinery to be built. It'll be the first refinery in what, 40 years or 50 years or something like
Sure.
that, and built in the United States. And that's because of the Permian Basin oil, which is a lighter type oil. So, what does this mean for Mexico? Well, Mexico produces crude, but they don't refine much. So they export crude largely to the United States. We refine it and then we send them products, whether it's diesel fuel or gasoline. I don't see that changing, but I'm not an oil expert per se. On that part of it, but I don't see that. I don't see that changing. In other words, I see that pattern probably ramping up, if anything. Despite the fact that there was some rhetoric I want to say late last week, where the U.S. trade representative was expressing some concerns about USMCA and about how things are going to have to be revamped quite a lot. I suspect that the current situation, the United States will back off at least somewhat on any kind of a major change to USMCA.
Okay. That's really an interesting answer because a lot of times, I mean, people still there's a lot of the proof is in the pudding. We don't really exactly know exactly what's going to happen because the
Right.
situation when with Venezuela is it a takeover? Are we in charge with the government? Are we not? Did we just change the regime? Are they a friendly regime? Are we? I mean, there's a lot of also moving components regarding that. So
That's
the
right.
political ramification, the political, basically, if this government is going to last and is going to be always friendly toward the United States, that's going to also have a lot of shifting and a lot of changes regarding that. I mean, everything is really interconnected. And
One impression that I really have with the Venezuela situation is that there's going to be more foreign direct investment in Venezuela now. And I think that's kind of what the Trump administration has been wanting. And I think they're going to get that now. Trump seems to have made a deal with the new leader of Venezuela, who was the vice president. Um, and she seems to be kind of going along with the Trump view of things. And I'm thinking that she probably will open up the country to more foreign investment by companies and so on who have the expertise to be able to get the stuff out of the ground more efficiently. I don't know what that means in terms of refining capabilities and all that, but I do think there's going to be more stuff coming out of Venezuela, but it takes time. These things don't happen overnight. So whatever price hikes we're seeing right now from the disruptions, disruptions can cause prices to instantly go up. Fixing those problems takes a long time.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that's just a general question regarding the Trump administration and then how they've been performing. And a lot of times people say, I mean, it does matter who's leading the pack and everything else from an economic standpoint and a political standpoint. Is the way you evaluate at this point? We haven't been even. It's only been a little over a year in the second administration for Trump. It seems like it's a lot longer because a lot has happened, over the past few months and everything else. So you think, have we ever witnessed anything as volatile as this
No,
from a previous standpoint? Like, can you just kind of
no.
walk us through that? Okay. That was a quick no. Okay. All right. So what is the actual, long-term implications and ramifications regarding the Trump administration as they are behaving?
I don't know. I'm trying to be as objective as possible here, but I see him as becoming increasingly erratic. I would go so far as to say that I agree with those who use terms like unhinged.
Okay.
I don't know what to expect.
Okay.
I mean, look at how wildly things have played out just in the past few days.
Right.
It's been all over the map. No, no
Yeah.
pun intended. But um, I just don't know. I mean, there's so many things at play here. There are the midterm elections, and this seems to be very important. I have no idea of what impact the Epstein files has. Everybody is saying, "Oh, well, it's all reacting to the Epstein files." I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of wishful thinking on the part of a lot of people that the Epstein files is going to just disrupt everything. I think it would be very bad if that did. Um, there'd be a lot of fallout from that. But no, I've never seen anything like this. Just this kind of
Okay.
erratic, quick decision making that seems to contradict itself. I mean, just look at the numerous justifications for going to war with Iran.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
not that they're necessarily contradictory, but they're just kind of all over everywhere. And so dealing with this administration is going to be extremely difficult. What message does it send to the rest of the world when members of the cabinet are leaving are being pushed out, even members that seem to be such strong loyalists.
Right.
What does all of this mean? And the shakeup within the Pentagon.
Right.
Hegseth I can't keep up with it all. Hegseth
Yeah.
has gotten rid of a lot of top people, top
Yeah.
brass.
14, I think 14 as of yesterday.
Yeah, and so what does that mean? What does that mean then for our defense, our strategies or offensive strategies or whatever?
Okay.
It's just so much uncertainty. And then there are those who say, "Oh, well, that's what Trump's dealing, his art of the deal is keep people off balance." Yeah, but we're talking about millions and millions of people affected by this. I think
Right.
I think collectively around the world, the blood pressure has increased.
Yes.
And I don't
No,
make statements like that lightly.
yes. And also the fact is from Trump perspective and also Hegseth and everybody else in the administration, it seems like there have not been a consensus on the objectives. It seemed like it's a moving target. They said there's going to regime change, not a regime change. Did we change the regime? Did we kill the leadership? I mean, the definition of changing a regime, it's not just killing the top guy and replacing by another guy who is adhering to the same kind of ideology, right?
Right.
So, but I mean, they claim that we, even though we did not intend to have the regime change, but we wound up doing that anyway, kind of like icing on the cake. And then, but that's not really the definition of the regime change. And also the administration itself, they were conflicting if it's what the goals are in terms of why are we going, give me the top 10 reasons why we gone to war, and
Yeah.
also what is the objective, what is the victory, what is the objective that we have in mind. I mean, a few days back, I mean, last week, it was kind of an interesting thing. Trump said if we open the Strait of Hormuz, that we declare victory. Well, before the war, the Strait of Hormuz was open, anyways. If this is the kind of keys to victory, why did we go to war to begin with? Because everything with the flow of oil and the Strait of Hormuz, a lot of people right now, even regular people, they're talking about the Strait of Hormuz, and 3 weeks ago, they have no idea where that was. They probably would have thought it was somewhere on the moon or something. Like, what is the Strait of Hormuz? Now everybody's talking about it. So there's a lot of kind of miscommunication between the administration themselves. So
Some of the memes I've been seeing are hilarious about,
yeah,
Strait of Hormuz and um yeah, it's I I think what the administration was hoping for. There's kind of two parts to what I want to say here. First of all, I think Netanyahu's objective was regime change, and I think he talked Trump into it. Secondly, I think Trump thought that it would be as easy as Venezuela.
right,
You just replace the person at the top, get somebody in there that's okay with going along with you, and voila, you have it. Everything's fine. But the regime in Venezuela was in power for what, a decade, a couple decades, whatever.
right, right,
Iran, we're talking about, a civilization that's very long,
right.
very lengthy. And um, I think this was very badly misplayed by both the Americans and the Israelis. I think they underestimated the ability of Iran to fight back.
Yeah. So you think this is a kind of a scenario like a wag the dog kind of deal? Israel had an agenda, and then finally they found someone to kind of follow through. Because if you go to the rhetoric of Netanyahu, he's been talking the same game for a long, long time.
That's right.
And then it seems like he ran it by multiple presidents, and no one, wanted to be part of that. And also, you can also make the comparison analysis of he said the same thing about Iraq. The Middle East will be a much better place after removing of Saddam and after taking regime change and everything else. And then it did not. The Middle East is not better off today than it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago. But
Right.
regarding Iran, I mean, there was like videos dating back to about 30 years ago. And then Netanyahu, the only reason it's been from a long time ago because he looked different 30 years ago. But it's the same rhetoric. So finally, he found someone who is a kind of going to go along. But honestly speaking, like why, in your opinion? And I'm not going to bring the Epstein files because a lot of people adhere to that. I'm not really a conspiracy theory person, but lately it's been like all over the place. But what do you think the rationale behind finally Trump kind of caving in to the demands of Netanyahu, who've been asking pretty much the same thing for the past 30 years. What do you think the mindset? Is it Kushner? Is it somebody else? Is it his son-in-law? Is it what is the rationale behind Trump following suit with what Netanyahu wanted to do to begin with from 30 years ago?
He's playing to his base. His base, his we're talking the hardcore members of the base, the people that will never leave him. And they have, I don't quite fully understand it, but they have an ideology, a religious ideology that Israel comes first. And I don't quite get that because there's quite a difference between Judaism and Christianity. But
Sure.
for whatever reason, there are these hardcore Christian nationalists that form the really that is the essence of his base. And that base will go along with anything that the hardliners in Israel want. And Netanyahu wants this, and Trump realizes that he could curry favor with his own base by going along with Netanyahu's wishes. And I think it was
Yeah.
all just poorly thought through.
But actually, with this one, I think if Trump has the capacity to want to do that, he probably feels he hasn't lost a lot of support, but his base actually has been fractured. The MAGA movement has been fractured because the Marjorie Taylor Greene and then the Tucker Carlson have been just openly, even Megyn Kelly, which is kind of like
Yeah.
talking bad about him and kind of like in opposite of what he wants to accomplish. So you think Trump is going to pivot back to the ideology of America first and try to recommunicate that message before the midterm election, or he feels like he's gonna declare victory as he did and gonna go along, and then he's gonna also suffer the consequences of furthering fracturing his base. What do you think?
It's hard to get into his head and know exactly what he's thinking, but I suspect it's something in between those two. I think he wants to somehow pivot back to an America first thing, but and at the same time he's kind of looking for an off ramp from this. So I think what's going to happen is it's because of, like you said, there are people from his core base that are now kind of saying, "Hey, wait a minute, this is not what we signed on for." I think he may realize that. That's probably why this agreement seems to favor Iran. I'm
From the
sure
looks of
somebody
it, from the
could
looks of
find
it,
an
yeah.
argument to disagree with me on that. But to me, it seems like it favors Iran. Iran came out of this thing amazingly well.
Yes.
Going from having their civilization destroyed, and 24 hours ago, I was thinking, does that mean a nuclear weapon? I have no idea. With
Yeah, it was a lot of people was up for grabs. The interpretation of it was like, what does that mean?
And then now, what is the outcome of this thing? Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz, and they're going to be siphoning taxes off of ships traveling through it, much the way that Egypt gets tolls from the use of the Suez Canal.
Right.
So, and I think Trump seems happy with that. He seems like he'll probably shift and start talking about his ballroom again.
Yeah. Which he
And
was talking about not that long ago. I mean, last
yeah,
week.
that's right. He'll get tired of this. It's everything is 2 weeks. We've kicked it down the road 2 weeks. He'll find some way of saying in 2 weeks from now that I'm just predicting this based on kind of what I see. He'll find some way of basically saying the talks are going well. We'll take another look at it in another couple of weeks.
Right, right. There's really no telling on. This is a very unconventional, presidency, a very unconventional administration. He actually, 2 weeks ago, he was claiming that the talks are going well. And then Iran said, we're not talking to anybody. It's like, who are you talking to?
Right.
And even one time he said one of the former presidents has called him and told him, I wish I did what you did in Iran. And he did not say whose
He didn't say who
president it
that was.
was.
Yeah.
And then everybody's like, it's like, who the hell? I mean, who did that? I mean, no one knows. And then he said, well, for the privacy, I mean, knowing what we know about Trump, if that actually happened, Trump has no problem in probably saying it was this person who told me. But the
Exactly.
fact he's doing this, and I mean, I'm sure like every time all the former alive presidents, when they meet, it's like, which one of us talked to him? It's like, I haven't talked to him in the past, whatever. So I'm not saying that did or did not take place, but it could go either way. So Trump could actually, he said that, and also right now he could also say, the Iranians, in behind closed doors, they're begging me not to start the war, or Pakistan is involved. I mean, he could claim victory in a number of ways, and we don't know exactly if that's substantiated by something that actually did happen or not. I mean, it just like the way we following through with Trump is really kind of an interesting phenomenon, honestly. There's one thing I want to discuss. Oftentimes, when we evaluate the performance of presidents from the first administration to the second one, I mean, this is a unique one because Trump served from 2016 to 2020, and now it's 2024. They're not non-consecutive, presidencies. Do you feel is there a paradigm shift in the administration from the first one to the second one? What is the main major differences between his administration and the first administration as opposed to the second one? Is there any differences?
I don't think it's much of a as much of a paradigm shift as it is a shift in who is surrounding him, who is advising him. It seems that the second term here is he has people who are even less qualified than in the first term and even more loyal than in the first term.
Yeah, there's a lot of yes people. There's a
There's a
lot of
lot of
like,
yes people, even
yeah,
more so.
yeah.
The first term, he actually was able to get a few good things done. USMCA was very good.
USMCA, yeah, exactly.
I think
Replacing
I
NAFTA,
think it
yeah.
was very effective in the way that he convinced the Europeans that they've got to pony up more for their own defense. I think he succeeded in that. My own view, is this could be argued. My own view is that the North Korea visit was probably a good thing when he visited North Korea. First he was
Hmm.
talking about him as Rocket Man and all this stuff, and then
Right,
he went and
right, right,
visited
right,
him
right.
and he lectured him on, what he could do with his country. He has abundant resources. It could be a big, beautiful country, a beautiful, gorgeous with the right kind of development. You could have golf courses and resorts. And I forgot exactly what he said, but his point was spot on.
Right.
If they would get rid of that terrible dictatorship there and they opened up, they don't have to become like, Cuba prior to Fidel Castro and become a sinful place like that. But if they opened up, they could become something like Vietnam
Sure,
and maybe
sure.
even better.
Yeah.
Um,
That was kind of interesting because at some point he did send the basketball like team led by
yeah,
led by Dennis Rodman, kind of
that's
like
right.
similar to like the ping pong diplomacy with Nixon and when he sent the ping pong team
That's
to,
right. And
to 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 China.
I thought that was good.
Yeah,
My own feeling,
I'm just surprised I didn't see Dennis Rodman in this administration,
yeah,
leading some kind
yeah, well, right. Um,
of
he did a couple other good things too. I personally thought it was on balance better that he sort of outsourced the Syria thing to Putin. Maybe the end result wasn't so great with al-Assad, but at least we didn't get involved with that. So I thought that was pretty good. And and I think I mentioned USMCA, very, very, very good. Now he's even talking about how USMCA might need to be scrapped. So it's not some. I don't see it as much as a paradigm shift as more of a personality shift. I think he's just becoming more and more himself and
right.
just digging in more. And I don't know, some people talk about, I hate to even bring this up, but some people talk about cognitive decline. I mean, I don't know. I'm not an expert on that kind of stuff, but it's possible. It sure seems believable. Something's not quite right there in my
Yeah,
view. But
yeah.
in terms of the actual, message, it's kind of all over everywhere in this one. He's less consistent in the second term.
Absolutely. And we're just beginning. I mean, this is only 1 year into it. Um, based on the political and the economic climate that we are on today, what your kind of projections to the midterm election? What do you think is going to happen, and what is the impact of the results either way, like winning or losing the House? And I mean, Trump actually did say one thing. He encouraged people to vote in large numbers because if he loses the House and the Senate, we're going to be approaching another impeachment. He can count on the Democrats, if they have the power and they have the votes, to actually go through another impeachment. So what is again just the midterm election? What's the impact of the midterm election? What's your predictions regarding that?
I have none. So much could happen between now and November. There may not even be an election.
Oh
I mean,
wow.
there is that possibility. I still think there will be, but there are a lot of very credible people out there who are saying, don't count on it. Um,
So what is that hypothetical scenario going to involve? When we going to find out about there's no election? What's going to happen for us to kind of be approaching that, in your opinion?
there would have to be some sort of a national security emergency where the midterm election would have to be held up. And that would involve a lot of exaggeration. There could be something where all of a sudden they found some kind of evidence of voter fraud or some interference in the election. And so therefore we have to call it off. And again, that would be exaggeration and just stuff that's just made up. Um, I personally don't think it's going to go that far, but I'm hearing some fairly credible people saying things like that.
Yes, I've heard, and I've been following kind of the same story.
But
A lot of people.
let's say for the sake of argument that everything goes through and all that,
Mm-hmm.
I think the Democrats will pick up the House barely, and the Senate it's kind of too early to tell. It would come down really, I guess, to Georgia,
Yeah.
John Ossoff,
Yes.
and then there's the whole issue of Maine. I don't know what's going to happen in Maine. Um, some Democrat infighting is potentially causing some problems in places like that.
Okay. Now, the same people that actually make a lot of noise regarding the midterm election and then the possibility of it going through or being delayed or raising some kind of, red flag regarding that also are the same voices that saying, by the same token, we might also have issues with a peaceful transfer of power in 2028. Um, you think that's a possibility also? Like maybe he claims,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah. The midterm will be an interesting sort of trial run to see what happens, but I think the risk of the 2028 election being held up are even greater.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be really, really interesting times at that point, because a lot of people are saying, I mean, if there's any like a constitutional channel and basically a legal channel to kind of go through with that, is like maybe repealing the 22nd Amendment, replace it by the 28th Amendment, which is going to be allow people for run for multiple terms beside the two, we have already in play by the virtue of the 22nd Amendment. But that's the possibility of that happening, probably not very, very easy to do. So then people are saying it might be another option, which maybe declare some kind of an emergency and then maybe suspending the elections. There's a lot of people. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm just saying there's a lot of really credible people predicting that it could happen. And if there's a time that actually this could have happened, is probably going to be this time. Okay. And now there's a lot of voices as well talking about invoking the 25th Amendment, which it's been in the books. It's never been tried before. A lot of people thought they were urging Mike Pence actually to kind
Right.
of go do it through that when they're going through the whole impeachment thing. But do you think that's a possibility with this
No, I don't.
administration?
I don't because the as I understand the steps that would have to happen, they're all of the people involved are all loyalists, very staunch loyalists.
Yeah, this one
So
being kind of
it's
like the 25th Amendment, in order for it to happen,
I think it
it's like
takes the vice president, right? And
and
then it's got to
half the
go through the
cabinet.
cabinet.
Half the cabinet, yeah.
And then I think it has to be run by the Congress.
Right.
I don't know if
After
the Congress weighs in on it or if they're just told about it, but it's mostly the cabinet that has to
it's the
do this.
cabinet. It's the cabinet. And these
Yeah.
things, the way I see it is like it's like a political coup. I mean, there's no you're either going to be the next president or you're going to be ousted. Let's say J.D. Vance, he's going to try to go through it, and then if Trump gets a hold of it, by a member of the cabinet who actually was approached by J.D. Vance. And then Trump can actually just fire J.D. Vance and
That's
maybe
right.
so it has to be kind of like really taken over, but you have to be like a really a secret plan. And I don't think Trump is, and that's maybe another reason why Trump is surrounding himself by really loyalists. And for that, even if J.D. Vance wants to entertain that idea, he doesn't know who to trust and who doesn't to trust. Is he? Am I going to be able to convince Pete Hegseth or Marco
Yeah,
Rubio, all
because
those guys is
because
very, very hard.
JD Vance is an amateur. He doesn't know this stuff
Right,
like the way
right,
Trump
right.
does.
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think that's exactly right. And that's what Trump is masterful at is just ensuring that he stays out of trouble. You know,
Right, right,
his whole career has been based on let's be honest, a lot of shady real estate dealings and keeping himself out of prison,
right.
keeping himself out of trouble.
Yeah,
And he's a master at it. He's very good at it.
absolutely, absolutely. Okay, well, that's kind of, I mean, I know this is going to go this way
But
because,
keep in mind that what we're talking about here is a lot of speculation.
oh yeah, absolutely,
We're just
absolutely.
talking about the different possibilities that have been
Right,
floating around out
right,
there.
right, right. Now I'm gonna just kind of like I want you to put your political geography hat on, and then kind of give us some kind of any updates on what you've been working on because I know last time we talked, we you had a couple of things going on. Can you just give us an update on where you are in research and then in terms of like geopolitical stuff that could relate to this or maybe not? Just kind of kind of pivot back to the original topic.
All right. I think there's a little bit of overlap there. I'm working on my second book. This one is a book on agricultural transportation. And you may be wondering, well, why do a book on agricultural transportation? And the answer is because there isn't one.
Oh, wow.
So I found that out when I was doing research for a project a couple of years ago that I presented at a conference paper on U.S. grain exports. I found out I was looking for, to do my literature reviews section. I looked for a book on agricultural transportation, could not find one. So I was talked into doing it. So I'm doing it now. Um, but where that overlaps with the current events here would be in the fertilizer markets, but also just in general. Um, One thing that strikes me about agricultural transportation, now I'm focusing on Texas in particular because if I tried to do this at the scale of the world, it would be a huge, huge book. It would be a huge undertaking that would take many, many years to do. So as geographers, we think in terms of scale and what's the appropriate scale for things to happen, especially like in economic geography, but in the research of geography. So one thing that occurs to me is that as globalization has kind of plateaued and been replaced, or somewhat replaced by more regional type trade, if you think of the trade blocks, the kind of production platforms around the world, North America, Europe, East Asia, and so on. Um, Agriculture kind of defies that, especially if you're talking about things that are not perishable. So you can have grain shipments going from Argentina to China almost as easily as going from the Pacific Northwest of the US to China.
Wow.
And so that's kind of an interesting thing there. But the current situation with the Strait of Hormuz, that is impacting. I would think it would be impacting grain imports by Gulf states, but it certainly is impacting the exports of fertilizers and raw materials for fertilizers. So the fertilizer market, um, they do export some, more or less finished fertilizer, ready to use nitrogen-based fertilizers from the Middle East, from the Gulf states. But they also export the raw materials where things can be made elsewhere. All of that's being disrupted now. And some estimates I've seen are up to 30% of fertilizers are impacted, and something like 40% or more of fertilizers that are shipped are impacted by this. So yeah, so ag transport, why not? I mean, I'm thinking that early in the history of the domestication of animals, we know that the donkey was one of the first domesticated animals. And why was it domesticated? Well, to carry goods back and forth between villages in East Africa and in the area of now like Sudan and Egypt and so on. And then it diffused from there. But what were they transporting? It was agriculture, right? Agricultural goods. So it's agriculture is 4% of global GDP, and nearly 100% of agriculture is traded or moved around. It could be just done domestically, but as opposed to, say, consumption of agricultural goods on the farm, right? That would be like one millionth of 1% or something like that, I would think. So it's traded. Everybody in the world is impacted by the movement of agriculture. Why is there not a book on that? So that's kind of my justification for this book. And then how does it relate to some of the things we're talking about here? Well, obviously, Russia and Ukraine are big grain exporters, and there are, tariff issues happening. I don't know to what extent there are embargoes. I know that for example, I've read quite a bit from the European press about how Russians are, quote unquote, stealing Ukrainian grain. And what they mean by that is it's grain that's grown in the occupied areas of eastern Ukraine, the areas that Russia is
Sure.
occupying. And then the Russian ships take it out, and then they do ship to ship transfers, like out. I don't know where that would be, in the Mediterranean or somewhere. They're transferring the grains from one ship to another so that they can change the paperwork and have it so that it's not Russian grain. So there are some geopolitical things that happen there. Certainly, the tariff warfare, if you want to call it that, the tariff wars between the Trump administration and China has caused some disruptions in the normal flow of things like soybeans, wheat, and so on, even corn and even sorghum. Texas, we grow a lot of sorghum here, and a good deal of that up until, well, let's say when it was times, other than Trump being in office, uh, well over half of the sorghum produced in Texas was exported to China, but now that's down a lot, and they're getting it from other sources now. Brazil is coming online with that. Same thing with soybeans. So some countries are winning from all of this.
Right.
Brazil is winning. I think Argentina is doing very well with their grain exports. They have new markets. I find it ironic that just as a kind of a little aside here, that China's exports at the end of last year, despite having a year of suffering um, the tariffs, and by the way, Biden kept a lot of those tariffs in place from Trump's first term, but they got even uh, more harsh during Trump's second term, that first year. And yet, China, um, their exports overall increased last year. Just total exports for China, manufactured goods in particular, increased. So even though we were slapping tariffs on Chinese made goods, they found other markets for their stuff.
Okay.
So
All
there's a
right.
lot of resilience, and that's also the case with that I'm finding with agriculture. And that happens at the scale of the state of Texas or the United States, but it also happens globally. If there is some kind of a disruption to the movement of say, grains because of
Sure.
climate change related things, whether the drought keeps the river levels so low that barges are no longer feasible, then they just switch to rail. If the cost of fuel becomes so high that it's just too expensive to do things by truck or rail, they shift to barges. And
Sure.
so it's amazing how resilient that is.
Okay. Now, when is the book is going to be coming out?
Oh, I have no idea.
Okay, it's gonna.
I've got at least another year of field work to do. I'm
Okay,
going to be going to West Texas probably in the fall, if not the late summer. I'm going to go around the Lubbock area because that's a major agricultural region for the United States.
sure, absolutely. Okay,
And plus, there's a conference that I'll be attending in Lubbock at the end of September. And that'd be a good time because I think the harvest will be happening then.
okay,
And so I'll
okay,
be able to study that.
sure.
This summer, I'm going to be focusing more on the lower Rio Grande Valley. There's a lot going on there.
Okay,
The paper that I'm presenting next week at the Western Hemispheric Trade Conference, I'm looking at South Texas maritime ports and their agricultural activities. That would be Corpus Christi, Brownsville, and Harlingen. And they're all very different. And even though they're fairly close together, they're all quite different in the way that they handle agricultural related goods. So
well,
I've kind of done most of Central Texas and Southeast Texas. I still need to do a little bit more in the coastal bend area. That would be sort of the hinterlands around Corpus Christi. Um, that's a major cotton and sorghum production area. And then
okay,
the valley, I have to do more work down there. And then at some point, I've got to tackle uh, the history of Fort Worth. I mean, at least hit the history of it because that was like a major agricultural hub, say in the early 20th century,
okay,
late 1800s, early 20th century.
all right.
So that's a very long-winded way of saying I've got at least a year of field work to go.
Yeah, it's gonna be. I'm sure it's gonna be
But
very
it's coming
interesting.
along. The way I'm doing
Uh,
it to keep myself. So if there are any grad students out there listening, or even undergraduate students who, the way to the way that I've always kind of done research and publishing, the whole publish or perish thing in the universities, it's true.
uh,
If you don't publish, the best way I found to do it is do a conference paper and actually make a paper. Don't just do a PowerPoint presentation. Actually write up a paper. Then from there you tweak that,
expand.
expand it, and that becomes an article or a
Yes,
chapter in somebody's edited volume.
it could
Well,
be a
that's kind
book
of
as
how I'm
well.
doing with this book. So this book is going to just be a collection of essays
Oh wow,
that started out as conference papers.
wow, interesting. I'm sure we'll revisit some of these issues when things kind of calm down a little bit
Yes,
at the national front. Yeah.
right.
Now, one thing we have a few minutes left, discussing this, kind of like take it all home. Last time we did discuss NAFTA and then USMCA. NAFTA, it seems from my vantage point, is a lot of people like familiar with NAFTA. I think there's a good number of people who are educated. They still do not know that NAFTA was replaced by USMCA. NAFTA still kind of like have a ring to it somehow. But there's an evolution, right? There was a political branding of sort going from NAFTA to USMCA. Where do you see USMCA going? Are we going to do another political branding down the line? If there's anything, a negotiation thing going, where do you see the trade, the major shift between NAFTA and USMCA? Is that going to stand, or we're going to be replacing that with something else, in your opinion?
Well, first of all, I'm not of the school of thought that USMCA was a minor tweak of NAFTA, nor am I of the school of thought that it was a majorly new trade bill. It was it was a revised version of NAFTA,
Yeah,
but it's
like
basically
an
NAFTA at its
evolution,
core.
an
And
aggressive revolution, maybe. Yeah.
and I think it's an improvement. They got rid of a couple of bad things in NAFTA. Well, I mean, NAFTA was kind of a first try, right? It
Right,
needed
sure.
to be revisited, and
Hmm.
I think it's a very good next step. Now, some of the things they're talking about for the new versions of it, they want to tighten the labor requirements even more. And I think that's probably a good thing. They also want to, and what I mean by that is they came up with a scheme that in the automotive industry, and there might be a couple of other related industries too, but they predominantly talk about automotive, is that the average wages had to be $15 an hour or more. So that means then that only certain things could be done in Mexico. And I think they're going to tighten that a little bit more. And that's good. That should hopefully raise wages in Mexico. Mexico, for their part, though, they need to concentrate much, much more on getting people into the formal sector of the economy and out of the informal sector. Because having so many people, I mean, I was reading the other day that over half of the Mexican workforce is in the informal sector. That keeps wages super low. If they would raise the wages by, through having more formalized jobs, first of all, people could benefit from the social safety net that much better in Mexico. But it would also enable wages to go up, which would help Mexico vis-a-vis the Trump administration, which is always still complaining about how there's cheap labor down in Mexico, which is true. A second area that I think is going to be improved is they're going to really tighten up this, how do I explain it? The way that China is able to sneak things through from second and third countries by way of Mexico and then into the United States. And so the content rules are going to be more strict. And I think that's a good thing. Mexico has already, Claudia Sheinbaum has already shown that she's very willing to crack down on a lot of China's activities of sending goods to Mexico through other countries and rebranding them as being from that middle country, like say Vietnam or wherever. Um, I think they're going to be cracking down on that more, and I think that's a good thing. So if we can just have some level heads, and if we have similar kind of upward trajectory as we did with USMCA, we could end up with a USMCA version two that could be even better. I
Okay.
don't know if they're going to rebrand it and call it something different. I wouldn't be surprised, given President Trump's tendency to kind of in a vanity way, he might call it the Trump agreement or something like that. You know how he is. But would that be rebranding, or would we all just kind of roll our eyes and go, well, okay, yeah, it's a tweaking of USMCA. I think it's going
Yeah.
to be like that. It's going to be a tweaking of USMCA, nothing
Okay.
major. I don't foresee any real problems because I think
Yeah.
most of the tweaking came after NAFTA, which was a modest amount and it was good.
Right. Because a lot of people just been reading on this, up on this, and then people USMCA, it did not really kind of a bulletproof situation with the tariff situation with Canada, with Mexico. It just kind of did the tariff thing did not was not impacted by this. So they did the tariff thing, let it run its course. So a lot of people thinking, what is the upside for this? And it is going to be changed down the line or not, but it is very volatile at this point. And but
Yeah, one complaint I do have about the arrangement is in spite of USMCA, we've been slapping tariffs on aluminum and steel
right.
from our trading partners, and that's not appropriate. What it tells me is it shows me that there's a lack of understanding about steel products and aluminum products. They're not all the same. It's kind of like the different grades of oil that we were talking about. Steel,
True.
it's not there's different kinds of steel. There's rolled steel, there's steel bars, there's steel ingots, there's many different kinds of things. There's sheet metal, there's anodized steel, there's tin plate. I mean, all these different kinds of things. A lot of them I don't quite know what they are, but I've seen them sort of listed, and each of the countries kind of specializes in certain things. Like for example, the kind of steel that would be used on the outside of refrigerators, that kind of sheet metal. That's a Mexican kind of thing.
Hmm.
We just don't really make that in the US, so we kind of need it. So there's still that regional complementarity going on, and I think that the administration just still kind of lacks the expertise in that.
Okay. All right. I got a couple of more things just to discuss briefly and kind of just land this whole argument and conversation. I'm having a great time discussing and learning from you. Um, as we discussed last time, this summer is going to be the United States, Mexico, and Canada, the host for the World Cup. And I really honestly, the political climate, the economic climate, the social climate, it's just very volatile at this point. Do you think it is going to go well? Is going to go without a glitch? Is going to be a lot of because you're talking about migration, immigration, all of those things happening. What's your outlook regarding the hosting of the World Cup? But this is the first time ever, also hosting it between three countries, and also the relationship has not been ideal between these three countries. What's your outlook regarding the event?
It could go in a number of different ways. The whole thing with immigration and customs enforcement and you know ICE and sort of their, how shall I say, their overhandling of certain events, that's freaking people out around the world. There's been talk of trying to change the thing so that only Mexico and Canada uh, host it. So I don't really know. I don't know what's going to happen. I suspect in the end that the Trump administration is going to kind of tone things back because they're going to realize we sort of need to be part of that, and it's in our best interest to do so. And just like I'm kind of under the impression that ICE, the way that they conduct business has been reined in a little bit. They've calmed things down somewhat. I think that something similar is going to happen with rhetoric about other countries. Um, Now, then there's a whole new, fly in the ointment here, and that is the what's going on in the Middle East right now. How is that going to impact things? Or
Sure.
will there be boycotts because the U.S. is involved in it? And it seems to me that alliances now are shifting a lot. Um, India, China, Russia are kind of coming out as being sort of pro-Iran right now. Am I correct in that? That's my impression.
Yes, not India.
Not India.
China, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. China, Pakistan, Turkey, Egypt.
Yeah.
And then it's also this. I'm talking about governments and people here, and then
Right.
throughout the Middle East, it's like a deflecting thing because the government sometimes they are lining up with the United States and Israel on this in this conflict, but the people also does not really reflect the wishing or the way the governments feel about this whole thing. So there's a lot of
Right.
conflicting reports, but from a government standpoint, Pakistan is the one. Actually, Pakistan is the one that basically brokered the deal of ceasefire because they came out with the demands and they talked to the United States about ceasefire for 2 weeks, and then they communicated the demands of the Iranians back to the United States, and then they are the one that kind of brokered the deal of the 11th hour.
Right.
So there's a lot of political shifting happening at that point.
But I mean, how do you see it playing out in terms of are people going to boycott the thing if the United States is involved?
It really is. It really depends on if the ceasefire is going to hold or not. Because it's ironically enough, there's a lot of people. This is basically, I like soccer. I watch the World Cup a lot, and then I'm familiar with it. Where it takes place, and then the boycott, and then who is involved and not. Um, this is the biggest World Cup we're ever going to have. It's 48 teams, and then Iran is in it. Iraq is in it.
Wow.
Jordan is in it. The United States is. I mean, there's a lot of political rivalries
Yeah.
going on in there, and they are also playing together in the World Cup. So that's going to be an interesting thing. And I do believe the outcome, if the ceasefire is going to hold, and then leading to May, if it's going to be okay, and we're going to go back to some kind of normalcy regarding that, then it's going to be okay. If not, then I suspect a lot of countries will probably wind up boycotting
Yeah.
this event because it's not. Sometimes also it's not just the government themselves. Sometimes players might be boycotting this thing because sometimes they don't want to be a mouthpiece for the government. It's like, hey, I'm playing with this team. My government is for this team, but I'm not. It's gonna. There's a lot of things happening, and they're not very concrete at this point, and a lot of people are anticipating if the ceasefire is gonna hold or not. So we'll see how that goes. Okay. Which really leads me to the last thing we're gonna discuss. If the ceasefire holds, okay, in the next 2 weeks. And we're going to go back to, okay, Strait of Hormuz is open. We're going back to whatever kind of normal we had prior to the war is starting. Can you project or can you see the winners and losers from an economic and a political standpoint? Who actually wind up winning at the global level? Like, is China versus, I mean, to me, the way I see it, China is always, every time the United States gets involved, and then they're not really declaring the winners, and it's not a clear win for the United States. To me, it's always an economic win for China. It's always
I
been.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So who else?
I
Who are the major players in terms of like putting a camp for winners and losers based on the outcome that we had already?
Russia for sure is on top. I would say Russia and China. In some respects, our discussion earlier about USMCA and all that, in some respects, Mexico will win somewhat from it because we're going to have to rely on them more than relying on the Middle East writ large. But I don't see them as being like a big winner because, of course, you have to offset that with things like the cost of living within all of those countries. But I think, on balance, just from a geopolitical standpoint, and Russia has the ability to play both sides here. Um, they they're going to benefit from exports of petroleum, and those prices are really good right now. I think China is they're really sitting pretty because they're kind of the adult in the room globally now. People are kind of looking to China as the stable country. Now, I actually kind of have a question for you, if it's okay, or
Sure,
I just wanted
absolutely,
to run an idea by you.
absolutely.
Um, and that this deals with China. Okay, so people are saying things like China is watching this like a hawk to see how this plays out so that they can see how to proceed vis-a-vis Taiwan. And my initial thought was, and I seem to be the only person expressing this view, but my thought was, well, if Iran has proven to be pretty resilient, they shot down our planes when their capabilities of shooting down planes was supposedly eliminated, and yet they did it anyway. They've been
Mhm.
able to shoot missiles even into Israel. They've been getting them past those
Sure,
weapons defense systems. I mean, maybe
absolutely,
not a
yes.
lot, but they've gotten some through. My thinking would be that China would look at this and go, oh, Taiwan probably has the capability to fend off amphibious attacks. So maybe we should just kind of not mess or not rock the boat. But then other people are sort of thinking the opposite. Like, well, with the United States engaged over here, that gives China the ability to maybe do something with Taiwan without the United States having the resources to jump to Taiwan's defense.
That is a great question. That could be worthy of a whole discussion for the next 45 minutes. It really is a great question. And I've been just talking about this not that long ago with a few people, colleagues of mine. That's an interesting question. I do believe, based on what I think, it's a projection hat on and reading certain reports and everything else. I do believe China is if they want to escalate the whole process, they will think, you know what, we have what it takes to do what we need to do. I mean, Russia is getting away with it in Ukraine. The United States is getting away with it in Iran, and Israel also with Iran as well. So why not do it? And then, but also they're going to look at it from a different standpoint. And then Chinese are very, very smart, very deep thinkers.
Yes, they are.
Um, and then the way I see it, if they see it, we can get, even though from a political standpoint, we can get away with it. No one can really mess with us, right? And Russia has a problem with their own, and Russia is an ally anyway. The United States, they got away with it in the United Nations and everything else. And they got away with it, right? The way I see it, even though they can get away with it from a political standpoint, but I think China, I mean, China right now, they're calculating how much more powerful they're becoming economically. They are leading and bounds away from where they were a year or 2 years ago. And I
Yeah.
think what they're going to do, they're going to hold their powder dry for now and then gain even more economically to put themselves in a position, in a political standpoint, to actually take over Taiwan at some point down the line, but not now. Because right now, I mean, the only winner economically that I see at the national arena, the international arena, is China. Because they are like putting out fires here and there, but they're not really involved in any troops, and they are really gaining a lot economically. So they have what it takes to take the next step and kind of get away with what Taiwan is going to be. But I think at this point, they're probably not going to escalate. They're probably going to put some pressure on, but they are really going to be enjoying having their economic status being thriving even more. That's my predictions. I don't know if that's kind of what do you think? I mean, I know you have a lot of ideas regarding this as well.
My thought is that Taiwan is probably stronger than either Ukraine or Iran in terms of being able to defend itself.
That's another factor, which also it leads to the same kind of thing. So that's another reason why China is not going to do
Going to be
so because
cautious.
it's going to
Yeah.
be very cautious because they eventually, I mean, you're talking about, and at this point, honestly, I mean, especially with the United States, Israel versus Iran, it's not if you can apply the rule of jungle in here. Let's say the United States is the lion, right? And then Iran is proven to be like a wolf, like a very and you don't see a lot of fights between lions and wolves in real life. They kind of try to avoid each other, like an elephant. And I've never seen a fight between an elephant and a lion, or between a cheetah and a cougar. They just
Yeah.
kind of like they coexist, and they prey on weaker ones that they can actually take. So I think applying the rule of jungle here, Iran has proved to be a formidable, adverse, country, and then the United States are not able to take it over, and then in a way that they were said they were gonna do. So honestly, also aside from China being, I asked you the question, but I partially answer it as well. Aside from China being declared a big winner and Russia also, I think Iran have kind of like gone up in standing in the Middle East and in the world. They were attacked for almost 40 days by the biggest country and the most strongest country in the Middle East and the United States, and they were able to survive. So from a
Survive, but
yeah.
it's going to take decades to rebuild.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But also
Um,
they have what it takes in the amount of like a brain power, and then so economically they're thriving. They have one of the biggest producing countries in oil.
yeah.
So they could, I mean, it's not like they are seeking, oil from other nations and everything else, and they have the brain power to kind of come back. But I'm talking about from a political standpoint, they proven to be a formidable enemy, and which actually China is going to be looking at it in a way. Is Taiwan going to be as formidable as Iran is? Maybe more, maybe less. But also that's why China is not going to basically start this whole thing because again, they are thriving economically, and they do believe the economic thing is going to put them in a better position to do something about this down the line if they decided to go with that. Because also right now we are approaching as well the 50-year contract coming up with Macau and Hong Kong.
Oh,
Because
right, right.
yeah,
Yeah.
so they don't want to be also approaching getting into Taiwan, and also Hong Kong and Macau is also going to be right there. It's going to be a try situation going on in here. So they're going to be cautiously proceeding with this, and I do not believe they are going to just do it the way the United States did it with Iran. That's just not what I think, knowing the Chinese and reading about them and all that stuff. So basically. All right, so we are coming. We had been talking for more than an hour. We covered a lot of things, and then honestly, we did not really have a prepared, like questions, a Q&A, and then prepared, kind of. It's just the whole conversation went organically as it should, and I
As it
really
should,
as
under
it
the
should as it should
circumstances.
under the
Yeah.
circumstances. So we took it to different places, and then we went back and forth, and I think we covered a whole lot of other bases regarding this. And I just want to thank you so much for taking the time out of
Well,
your busy
thank
schedule to
you.
be
This
here.
is this is good. I had to come up with a lot of those ideas kind of on the fly. A lot of those questions I hadn't really thought about, in the way that you framed them. It's like, oh, that's
Uh,
interesting. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I've been just thinking about this, and honestly, I did not really do a lot of like preparation. It's just like in my thought, in my head, basically watching the news and reading different reports about what's going on. So I
exactly.
thought it just kind of came up that way. I didn't want to put you on the spot in some of those questions, but you did great. You did great.
Well, I
Uh,
enjoyed it. It's
thank you so much, Dr.
tremendously.
Yoder.
I'm looking
Absolutely.
forward to the next one.
I am too. I am really looking forward to the next one. And then I just want to thank the audience for listening. And hopefully we will continue with Professor Yoder soon, so thank you so much for taking the time and then looking forward to the next one soon. Okay.
Thank you.